you recently put out an 11-point plan to rescue America, two of the big points of which are, quote, all Americans should pay some income tax to have skin in the game, even if a small amount. Currently, over half of Americans pay no income tax. It also says all federal legislation sunsets in 5 years. If a law is worth keeping, Congress can pass it again. So that would raise taxes on half of Americans and potentially sunset programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Why would you propose something like that in an election year?
Sure. Well, John, that's, of course, the Democrat talking points. It's a 11-step plan.
No, it's in the plan. It's in the plan.
But here's let's think about reality for a second. First off, let's talk about Medicare.
But Senator, hang on.
John.
So it's not a Democratic talking point. It's in the plan.
And also in the plan, it says we ought to every year talk about exactly how we're going to fix Medicare and Social Security. Here's what's happening. No one that I know of wants to sunset Medicare or Social Security. But what we're doing is we don't even talk about it. Medicare goes bankrupt in 4 years. Social Security goes bankrupt in 12 years. I think we ought to figure out how we preserve those programs. Every program that we care about, we ought to stop and take the time to preserve those programs. I mean, I just fought the postal bill because it put more responsibility on Medicare and took it off the Postal Service and put Medicare in a worse position. Now, let's go back. Let's talk about taxes for a second. I'll put my record up against anybody on tax cuts. I cut taxes and fees 100 times as governor. But here's what's unfair. We have people that could go to work and have figured out how to have government pay their way. That's not right. They ought to have some skin in the game. I don't care if it's $1. We ought to all be in this together. I'm going to continue to focus on reducing taxes. That's what I've done my whole life. But there's an 11-step plan. Go through it. Everybody's not going to agree with everything. 128 policy points. Let's be bold. Go to rescueamerica.com. Give me your ideas, or you can text America to 22044. Give me your ideas. I want to change this country. The woke left controls everything. We got to win, and we got to change the country.
As you said, not everyone agrees with it, and one of the people that doesn't agree with it is Mitch McConnell. Here's what he said.
Let me tell you what would not be a part of our agenda. We will not have as part of our agenda a bill that raises taxes on half of the American people and sunsets Social Security and Medicare within 5 years. That will not be part of a Republican Senate majority agenda.
Now, a few days after he said that, you penned a Wall Street Journal op-ed about your plan titled, Why I'm Defying Beltway Cowardice. Are you calling Mitch McConnell a coward?
What I'm saying is, I've been in D.C. for 3 years, right? I want to get something done. I went to D.C. to change this country. Look at where we are now. The woke left controls the executive branch. They control a lot of our government. They control academia. They control Hollywood. Look at it. We have an open border. We've decided we're not going to be energy independent. We've got to change this. You don't change it without having a plan. I'm a business guy. When I was in business, I wrote a plan. I surround myself with people. We implemented the plan. When I went for governor, I had a plan. We've got to have a plan for what we're going to do when we win. We're going to win. We have great people. But let's have a plan. That's why I said, go to Rescue America, give me your ideas. If these ideas of mine aren't the best, let's come up with the best ideas out there.
I think the majority of your colleagues want to focus on Joe Biden as opposed to coming up with a plan that they think that they can sell to the American people about what the Republicans would do. But anyways.
Yeah, when even the Fox hosts are raking you over the coals for your dismal plan, it might just be time to throw in the towel. This is Republican Senator Rick Scott, who, just to be clear, is the head of the NRSC, the National Republican Senatorial Committee. This is the guy in charge of electing more Republicans to the Senate. And his plan, if Republicans take over, is to raise taxes on 50% of Americans. Although, I'll be honest, it's a nice change of pace from their other plans of banning interracial marriage and the use of contraception. Some real winners to choose from here on the right. What's most telling here is that when confronted with the fact that Scott's plan will raise taxes on more than half of all Americans, he immediately derides it as a left-wing talking point, despite the fact that it is literally part of his plan. I'm sorry, but you know that your plan really sucks if you have to pretend that the thing your plan says verbatim is nothing more than an attack from the other side. At that point, even you know that you screwed up. Another horrific element of this plan is that all federal legislation would sunset in 5 years. And then if a law is worth keeping, Congress would just pass it again. Yeah, no problem. You know, Congress, that governmental body famous for just passing no-brainer legislation. Medicare expires, Medicaid, Social Security, no problem. I'm sure Congress could just pop it in and do what Congress does best and get that law passed. Just like it was able to pass other monumentally popular pieces of legislation like voting rights and allowing the government to negotiate lower drug prices and raising taxes on billionaires and universal pre-K and childcare and... I'm sorry, what? Oh, they didn't. You don't say. And by the way, if you have any doubt as to whether Rick Scott would screw Americans over when it came to programs like Medicare, just remember that Rick Scott himself personally oversaw the largest Medicare fraud in US history at the time when, as CEO of Columbia HCA Hospital, his company billed Medicare, Medicaid, and other federal programs for tests that were never ordered, attached false diagnosis codes to patient records to increase reimbursements to the hospitals. He claimed non-reimbursable advertising costs as community education, and billed the government for home visits for patients that didn't qualify to receive them. The hospital company was fined a staggering $1.7 billion, which was, at that point, the largest healthcare fraud fine ever levied by the Justice Department. And Rick Scott, trying to escape accountability, resigned as CEO fewer than 4 months after the investigation became public. So when he suggests sunsetting vital programs and then balks when getting caught doing it, just remember that he already undermined those programs once. He already stole money from Medicare and Medicaid, programs that service the elderly, the poor, the disabled, and the sick, so that he could line his pockets as the CEO. That is who Rick Scott is. And maybe the reason Republicans like Rick Scott are having so much trouble with even the most basic elements of figuring out how to govern is because they have no actual interest in doing it. I mean, dear God, watching the senator try and put together a plan to govern is like watching a zebra put on sneakers. If Republicans had any legitimate interest in governing, they wouldn't spend every waking second talking about critical race theory and Dr. Seuss and wars on Christmas and cancel culture and Mr. Potato Head. We don't have to guess what Republican priorities are because Republicans have already told us what their priorities are, and none of them are looking out for the people who they're supposed to serve. To see more videos like this, click the subscribe button right here on this screen. And if you want to support my work, subscribe to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. I cover the most important stories each week, and my guest is always one of the top political figures, including Vice President Kamala Harris, Jen Psaki, Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Nancy Pelosi, Katie Porter, Cory Booker, and so many more. The podcast link is also right here on this screen, so give it a listen and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.